as a lease analyst or do something else. And I kept asking myself, what do you really want? What do you love? What can you wake up and do every single day and be happy to do it? And I thought, I want to be a pastry chef. So I eventually just decided to train both as being a chef and pastry chef. I did both.
Well, why you started off as you wanted to be a pastry chef first?
I did want to do that first.
Because you like making pastries? Or?
I love that. And it's actually very different. And I'm glad I had that experience because it made me more valuable as an estate chef later. Because most chefs specialize in one or the other, being a regular chef or pastry chef. So I could do both.
So when I looked up the definition of what a chef is, it said that, like I was in the military and I was a subsistence supply clerk, but I was working with the cooks. I worked at the chow hall. So it said that a chef, the difference between a cook and a chef is that a chef works in a restaurant or something else. That's it. It seems like, I mean, there's more to it, but I'm saying that's what the definition was like saying. But what is it that, like, what? Because you were an estate chef, but you start off as a pastry chef. So there's all kinds of chefs, right? Like
there are, and for most of my career, people have just said that I was a cook, and it didn't matter that I had formal training, and didn't matter that I had a 4-year degree. So it's kind of an odd profession, and of course now it's become a thing of celebrity, and it wasn't when I started.
So you went your 4-year degrees in culinary arts. Oh, food performance, right? And then you decided to go with the pastry.
Well, I did training, just general training as an apprentice, but I also did classes at the same time. It was under the American Culinary Federation, and you can get designations, certifications through them. I really did not want to go that route. I just wanted my training and to go off from there. I'm not much on joining groups, even though I've had to for music purposes, and that's a different story. But as a chef, I kind of went it alone. And, when you're an estate chef, you're the one and only. You don't really get a lot of input from other chefs, which is one way that you grow. So now...
so you became an estate chef, but like, what made you want to do that though? Like, what made you want to be an estate chef specifically? Because there's all kinds of different types of chefs, right?
Well, when I graduated, I did get a degree in food and hospitality. It was a 2-year degree, an associate's degree. So I started working as a sous chef, pastry chef for, I guess it was Stonebriar Country Club back in the day.
Right.
It's been a while. I didn't really want to be in the commercial kitchen, and I knew that there were a few jobs in Dallas because Dallas is one of the few places that at that point had people wealthy enough to have an actual chef in their home where you could work and actually get regular benefits like an employee of a company. So that appealed to me, and I liked being a one and only. Yeah, I enjoyed that part of it. And, I didn't really have a budget. I didn't really have many restrictions. I kind of was a free spirit. They'd give you a credit card and a car and say, hey, dinner's at 6, or if we invite somebody, we'll let you know, that kind of thing. So I was able to have kind of an easy job in that respect, only in that respect.
So, like, what is it? Like, they take resumes and then you had an interview to become?
You have to audition. My first wealthy employer, I auditioned for that job and just did a dinner for the family. It was for a huge estate in Preston Hollow. I don't know how many acres it is. It's, oddly enough, that gentleman, the patriarch of that family, just passed away a couple years ago, and it's been sold to someone from California. So,
gotcha.
That estate may have been, I don't know, 20 acres or something. It was a big, massive house, 21,500 square feet. And
was that your first estate that you started?
That was the first estate where I started. When
you actually, auditioned for it, were you nervous?
A little bit. I mean, I'm used to being a performer, a flutist up in front of a group performing. So that's helped me, I think. In my later years, having to audition, it was a lot more nerve-wracking, and I cannot explain to you why, but I've had to do that recently and not enjoyed it at all. So.
Gotcha. But when you auditioned, did you like know what they wanted to eat, or did you just come in and do whatever you wanted to do and they just ate?
You typically submit a menu or maybe 3 menus, and they choose what they want.
Okay.
From those 3 menus, from those suggestions, and you go from there. And you have somebody who serves for you and somebody who cleans up and that kind of thing. So
when you auditioned and you became, first of all, how long were you at that estate for, being a chef?
Well, that's a funny story actually, because I was there for a year, but then I left and went someplace else. Another estate where I worked almost 8 years.
Oh.
But that place, whenever they had parties and they needed another chef, they'd say, hey, can you come and help out on Saturday night? Because I didn't work on the weekends for that other job.
Right.
So I helped a lot through the years, and I actually worked for them again in 2016 to 2019. So.
Oh, okay.
So it was really a
30-year span. The 2016 to 19 was full-time?
That was full-time.
Oh, so they brought you back.
Yes, and they tried to bring me back before, and it didn't quite work out. I don't know, just wasn't the timing or something. I didn't feel comfortable with it, but yeah, I did go back.
Is it considered a violation if you, not a violation, but like, you were off on the weekends, but you were chefing for another estate? So does that other estate, they're okay with that? Is that?
Well, I ask in advance.
Oh,
I
okay.
say, something like, does this make you feel compromised? If you feel compromised that I am doing that, then I won't, because my first priority is this job. So yes. What I'd like to do is some part-time work here and there. Is that okay with you? And if it's not, I will not do that. And
did they always, they were always okay with that?
Well, that particular individual was, but I've had jobs since then for, it sounds so snobby to say it, I don't mean it that way, for new money. That's a lot more aggressive jobs. There's a lot greater expectation and maybe not an understanding of what the typical estate chef job is like. For people who have already had workers in their home for a long time.
Gotcha. So you understand, because you've been doing this so long, the mentality between, let's just say, new money and old money and how things work.
Yeah, typically with old money or people who have had employees in their home, it's usually a massive home. It's usually a place where they do a lot of entertaining.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of free reign with cuisine, whereas day-to-day cuisine is usually, a lot more restrictive. But when there's a party, kind of anything goes, which is a lot of fun, basically.
Okay. So you enjoyed that?
I loved that.
Oh, okay.
I loved that. It was a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, but that's where I thrived. So typically you would work extremely hard maybe for 2 or 3 months, really long hours. But then they'd go, hey, we're going to Italy for 7 days, or, take some time off, or,
Oh, very good.
that kind of thing.
And I guess working with somebody for 8 years, an estate, you're like considered part of the family,
to a degree. I mean, there is a loyalty there, and there is a kinship, but I always try to make a solid line there.
Okay.
I call them Mr. or Mrs. whoever, because when you're in someone's home, sometimes you might be working late at night for a party, and they come down in their bathrobe and they're eating ice cream, and it's kind of awkward. So if you say Mr. So-and-so, there's that professional distance.
Yeah.
Even though I may have watched your kids grow up, or your grandkid may have made cookies with your grandkids, or whatever.
Right.
It's a little more comfortable to have that boundary line, appropriate boundary line.
True. Did someone have to cross that line to realize that you have to put a line, or is that just you knew from the beginning, I got to make sure that this line is there?
I just kind of had a sense of it that was the appropriate thing to do. Some houses, or most houses on that level, are formal, formal.
Okay.
You say Mr. and Mrs. anyway. They may be a big name. I've worked for some big name people, and for some. Can I
say one of the names, or no?
You can say one of the names.
I don't know if anybody out there knows who Ross Perot Jr. She worked for Ross Perot. I don't know Ross Perot Jr. I just know Ross Perot, not personally, but
that was actually a part-time job. They had a full-time chef, Susie, an English woman.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I did. Yeah, and I kind of helped out with her for 2.5 years, so she was kind of in and out.
So speaking of like help, so when you were a chef at that house for that estate for 8 years, whenever there's
I'm sorry, that wasn't the estate. Oh, you're talking about the one that I went to right after the first job I had.
right.
It wasn't the Perots, because I just worked part-time for the Perots for 2.5 years.
Oh, okay.
That next estate was, it was a lady who was the wife of an oil baron.
Okay.
Big name. And
Okay.
I worked for her for the last 7.5 years of her life. It's on White Rock Lake. Big white house.
I know White Rock.
Mm-hmm.
I'm new to Dallas, and we walk around White Rock and we admire the homes.
Yes,
So it's
right.
one of those homes that you were in.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you. Oh yeah, so when you were at the estate, the specific one for 8 years, what was my question? It was a question there.
Well,
I forgot what the question is, but I'll come back. But
okay.
like, this is what I was going to ask you. Did you need help at all whenever you were working? Like, did you have like an assistant, or you called your chef friends to come help with something, or did you take care of everything?
Well, typically the way that works is when you're a chef, a one and only chef at an estate, you do a lot of the work yourself, preparation work and cleanup and everything up until the event. At the event, you may have servers, you may have hired servers, you may have cleaners, maybe people who work there, maybe they don't. So it's all hands on deck when we have a big event.
But do you orchestrate everything with everybody?
I do, and typically I would have like a maitre d' who would be my eyes for the front of the house and let me know how the timing is. Hey, is it time for more hors d'oeuvres? Are we okay? What do you think? Are we ready for dinner? Ask the lady of the house if she's ready for dinner to be served, because I'm ready.
Sure.
And there's some communication back and forth through a wait person.
Yeah.
And I like very highly trained wait people, because it's important to do the timing correctly. Right?
So you actually have to interview these people, right, to make sure that they're up to par for. So like you said, you wanted somebody experienced, so you have to make sure you have somebody working with you that is experienced.
I often had people who were experienced. There are plenty of times I didn't, and I was very high strung at that point in my life. And that situation forced me to calm down. It's like, okay, you're going to be upset all the time, or else you're just going to let that go and work with, because everybody's doing the best they can. Just relax. So I'm not nearly as high strung as I was in those days. Thank you, Lord. Yes.
That came with time?
That came with time and maturity and, hard knocks, really.
Yeah.
So
when you were, first of all, I want to go back into you. Obviously, your career was 30 years, right?
It was.
Okay. So, sometimes when people leave something, it's because they lost the love for it, or maybe it's just time to retire, or maybe they want a career change. Out of the 30 years, did you enjoy actually doing the work the whole time? Or was there like the last 5 years, 10 years, or, did it change as time went on, or did you enjoy it just as much as you did from the beginning?
I have always loved cooking. I loved the idea of starting from scratch with everything as much as possible.
Right.
With a lot of raw ingredients and making something beautiful and tasty and nutritious and something that will delight people and that will be, it's kind of the way you love people. I think Thomas Keller said that, but it really is true.
What does Thomas Keller say?
Something, it's just not a direct quote, but something like, if you're a chef, the way you love people is you cook for them, and that really is true. That's how I experienced it as well. But when I burned out on my last job, it didn't mean that I didn't like cooking. It's that I actually burned out. The demands were very unrealistic, and
with the new money people.
Yeah, and I was not able to discuss that with them or make any sort of accommodation to make it where I could be there long term. They wanted me to be there long term, and it just became clear, if you make the level of demands that you're making, no human being can live up to that. Or there are plenty of chefs who work breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week. That's not a way to have a real life.
Right.
It's not a way to have a family life either. And I never married, so a lot of chefs in my position have not married, or else they marry someone in service. I've noticed.
Gotcha. Do you think the demands that they were asking, maybe if it was early in your career, maybe you would have, because you're at that point at your the last one, you already experienced, you already done it for a while. So there was probably, when you're in the beginning of someone's career, they'll accept more things that they would than if they would towards their end of the career. So do you think maybe you would have accepted that in the beginning? Maybe?
I don't think so, because my very first job, they wanted me to work on Saturday. They wanted me to work 5.5 days, and I thought, how am I going to have a regular life and do that?
Yeah.
So I waited. It probably was 3 months before we actually came to an agreement of what my hours would be, and I eventually did accept 5.5 days. So that was those were the people I knew for 30 years and worked off and on at their estate all that time. So the new money people it was like 25 different menus a week. It was unrealistic.
So anyway. if you would have, let's just say it was somebody with old money. That's what we're going to determine new money. Let's say it was somebody with old money that wanted you because they knew about you. You might still be there if it because the new money kind of was like, this is just too much. I'm done. But maybe if you were with somebody with old money, you'd still probably be doing it now, right?
I might be. Yeah, I might be. I will say I'm actually grateful for that new money burnout, even though I didn't really believe there was such a thing as burnout because I've always worked really hard.
Yeah.
So when it happened, I don't know that I recognized you're really burned out. I just couldn't do it anymore, and that had never happened to me. I just was like a deer in the headlights. That's not an experience I had ever had. But in retrospect, I'm grateful because I had wanted to design kitchens for a really long time and didn't know how I was going to make the transition.
Yes.
And I tried to approach different employers, and nobody was interested because I didn't have any experience, even though I have some college courses in that direction in green architecture and AutoCAD and some things. So I eventually called National Kitchen Bath Association, and I said, how do I get my foot in the door? They said, go work for Home Depot. And what I found out just a few weeks ago, Home Depot is the largest kitchen remodeler in the United States. I didn't know that.
Wow.
Yes, they are.
I didn't know that either.
And they have a training program, so I'm learning by doing. I've just kind of been thrown in there, and I'm hitting it hard.
I will say I spoke to Andy and said great things about you. I think your attention to detail, you're able to, I get pretty I'm very picky and, precise, and you stayed with me. You were very patient. You listened, you made good eye contact. You return, like you were sending us emails, keeping in contact, and that was really, really good. Even though you're new at this, I could already tell, and there's no disrespect to anybody that worked before you, but I could tell that you're going to surpass them.
Well, thank you.
Because, I think, and that's another question I'm going to ask you. What have you, from your, do I say chefing career? Is that the word?
That works for me.
So,
we know what you're talking about.
your career as a chef, what are you taking from that you're implementing in your new career as a kitchen designer?
Well, here's what's funny. For 5 years, I was in business for myself. I don't know if you remember in 2008 when our economy tanked really badly. I was laid off because my employer almost went bankrupt. And I actually did a party or two for them anyway, I still did a little work for them.
Right.
But they almost went bankrupt. So I went into business for myself. I did day chef work. I did catering. I did, I taught cooking lessons at Sur La Table. I did some different things that I was not able to do before.
Yeah.
But that day chef work, I would go into a different kitchen every day.
Yeah. And
I would have to rearrange it so that I could have a perfect food flow so that I could work really quickly. And so I thought from that, and efficiently, right, I thought from that experience I would be able to design kitchens really well. Turns out designing kitchens is really about logistics and numbers and putting everything in the right place. I think that was really good experience. I'm not sure how much that actually transfers. But I'm loving what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Even though I'm really new at it. So I guess that was a good experience. So
yeah, because you were able to deal with. You said you operated well under pressure, right?
I have to.
And I'm pretty sure there's either there has been pressure already with your new job, but there's gonna be pressure situations that you already have experience with that.
Right.
Now, we talked about you enjoying cooking. I mean, chefing or cooking. I can say cooking, right?
Cooking is what it's all about.
It's all about.
Love cooking. Love it still.
You ever thought about like having like a YouTube channel where you kind of like do what you do and talk about it?
I have. People have encouraged me to do that. I suppose I could. I mean, I'm knee deep, hip deep, neck deep in kitchen design.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. No, I was just asking that question just because you have so much. It's kind of like, you know, I grew up in Canada and I grew up in Montreal.
Cool.
Laval to be exact, but I grew up speaking another language, speaking French.
Really?
Yeah, so I was born there and I left when I was 17, so I speak French. My French is not as good as it was when I was there, you know, because if you don't use it, you lose it. However, it was not a waste, but I have no purpose to use French because I'm in the United States.
But don't you travel?
Yeah, but actually needing something like a second language, it only matters if you're using that language.
Well, I'm actually envious because one of my dreams was to be in France, do some French training, which I did a course in regional cuisines of France in France. But it was 5 weeks. I wanted to be there for years at a time.
This was before you were estate chefing?
Well, no, it was during. I had an employer who sent me over there for 5 weeks.
Very nice.
It was a wonderful experience, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So, but I didn't speak French.
Yeah.
I learned some little phrases, but, I mean, you know, didn't speak it.
I just thought about it recently, and I never really thought about going back because I left in 1990. And recently, like the last 2 years, I thought about going back and figuring out. And someone said, hey, you can live there 6 months and live here for 6 months. Because I don't want to be around the cold.
No, I understand.
So someone said, hey, maybe you could figure out where you could live there and go back and forth. And I was like, oh, that's something I never thought about. So then my French would be useful.
Yes, it would. Well, I can tell you, in my earlier years, had I spoken French, I probably would be there now. I might not have left. I was so enchanted with it, I might not have left.
Now, we're going to ask you some questions about when you were in these estate homes, beautiful homes, rich and powerful people.
Yes.
You have to respect them. You have to listen to them. You probably have to be a counselor to them. You probably have to be a mother to them. You have to do a lot of different. It's not just chefing. Am I right about this? Is there other things that you have to do for families?
It depends on the person. It depends on the level of staff that they have. Most estates have a house manager. So a lot of things go through the house manager. A lot of times you do not deal with a principal at all.
Okay.
So the level of contact that you have with them is up to them, how many people they have between you and them. So there are some employers that I had direct contact with every single day. There are some that I didn't see for days at a time and rarely spoke to. It just depends on, you know, how they get their information and from whom.
Now, I feel like a lot of people get along with you. You're easy to get along with, but when you were working there, was there anybody was there anybody that you had to deal with but you didn't get along with?
Well, you're seeing nice, polite Leslie, who's not cooking, who's not under stress and pressure, because there have been times under stress and pressure when I don't deal with it well. And I think I've come a long way. Okay. But I think there are people that would say, yeah, steer clear when she's cooking. Steer clear. Because it's, you know, it's hot and heavy. It's hot in that kitchen. You're under a lot of stress. You might not have every detail together. You might be working with people who are not experienced. All the stress and pressure is on you.
Yeah.
And you better perform. And you've got politicians out there, or you've got whoever. Just get it together.
Get it together. So, I mean, in those stressful situations, things have happened, right? Where you had to, this is the calm, nice Leslie, but then there's another Leslie, right? That other people witnessed.
Yes.
Well,
yes,
but it wasn't personal with those situations, right? It was just in that moment for that time, right?
Right.
So, but what I'm asking is, was there anyone you had to work with, whether it's the house person or whatever, that you had to work with and be around that you didn't really get along with?
Well, I can tell you there was a chef at that same estate that I was at off and on for 30 years.
Yeah.
I knew the chef. I worked with her. They had a week of parties, and they hired 4 Frenchmen, 4 maitre d' and 4 wait staff people. Yeah. And so when I met with them and showed them, I met just with the maitre d', and I showed him the menus for all of the parties that we were having. And I said, the way I set up the kitchen is, this is the hot zone, and so be in this area as little as possible, please.
Okay.
Just for safety's sake, we want everybody to be safe. And please tell your waiters that the chef is really biatch. Because I had worked with a lot of men from Europe. Their tradition is...
Wait. Who said?
I said that.
That the chef is a...
Me. No,
they said that about you.
Yes, and do you know the maitre d' said, you're a smart woman. Because he knows in the kitchen a lot of times the European tradition is different than the American tradition.
Is it more...
aggressive, more adversarial. So if you're a woman in there, they're going to give you trouble. So I said, make sure they know I'm going to be that way right back to them.
Right, because it was males.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure I could live up to that claim, but I just wanted them to take a step back. And the other 2 women that I was working with, the other chef, and the other, she was a house manager. I said, ladies, I know you haven't worked in commercial kitchens before, but please be careful of these guys. They can be explosive, not in front of guests, but they might be. I just want us to have a great time because we've got some great parties we're going to do. They were like, oh, Leslie, you're ridiculous. Well, we live to see a difference here. Not to say anything against Frenchmen. I love Frenchmen. There are plenty of Frenchmen that are friends of mine that I think are fabulous people. But under pressure, I wasn't really great. And under pressure, they exploded at those 2 women. I mean, and I watched it. So I just didn't say anything because...
But they knew not to do it to you because you said the other 2 women. Right. You set the tone of what you need for you to have your space and, helps you with your sanity throughout this stressful situation.
Right. And if they're raised in a different culture, they're going to have a different understanding of how things go. So I just look at it as, I've always worked in a situation where it's very international, lots of different people from different places, and you go with the flow and try to understand. If they're very different from you, they came from a different culture. They're not going to understand things the way that you understand them from your culture. That's true.
So you probably didn't take things personal because you understood the culture.
Right.
Someone that doesn't understand the culture is going to be really offended because they're going to take it to heart, and this is just the way it is.
Yeah, and sometimes I did it in the beginning, but I wised up.
Yeah, now, talking about men or women, boundaries, talking about cultures and understandings. In your 30-year career, you being a single woman, have you been hit on by people in the estate or at a party and things like that? Does that happen on a regular? Is that, what is that life like as a single woman, as a estate chef in these big parties and, homes?
Occasionally. Typically those parties, there's a lot of liquor flowing. So when people drink, it's a little bit...
Liquor flowing.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. A lot of liquor flowing, yeah.
It happens.
And liquor flowing means that people are more relaxed. Should we say that? Or
we could say that.
So when liquor is flowing, people tend to maybe say and do things they normally wouldn't.
Right.
Without the liquor. And did you? So basically, when the liquor was flowing, you already prepared yourself mentally that there's liquor flowing. That means there's more chances of like someone saying something or doing something to you or towards you or anything like that, right?
A lot of times, the kitchen is a separate place that is no one ventures into, no guest ventures into.
Okay.
I can think of one ranch house that I worked in, which was a big open area. Lots of people came in and out of the kitchen.
Okay.
So it depends on, how it's all set up. I do remember one party that was a Russian party at that same huge house. They put a huge tent on the east side of the house, or the south side of the house, and they made these ice bars that had holes for vodka. So it's like they were, you could get vodka yourself from this ice bar
right.
and caviar, and everyone was dressed as Russian royalty. Really cool. But, a whole lot of drinking going on.
Right,
so.
Right. So no one's ever did anything to cross the line with you during your career?
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, they have. Sure,
Oh,
they have.
they have. Okay.
They have. And, yeah. Well, go ahead.
When they have, like, you weren't surprised or offended because you kind of had it, like, you kind of see these things coming, right?
I didn't see that one coming at all, the one I'm thinking of, and I did say something to that guy later, I think pretty directly, but there haven't been that many incidents of that, just a few here and there.
Yeah.
Just a few.
Yeah, because, I just feel like in that world, I don't know anything about that world and what it's like to be a woman and being a chef, or, So, were you considered a head chef? I was looking up different, like, chef, executive chef, and, like, what was your title? I know it's a estate chef, but, like, you're the head chef of the house, so is that just a regular estate chef?
Well, they've only been using the word estate, to my knowledge, in the past 5-6 years. It seems like that it's kind of evolving because the chef shows are all over television. That wasn't the case when I started out. There was only, Julia Child and Jacques Pepin, maybe a few on, public television. The whole landscape has completely changed.
Yes, because I was looking up, top chefs in the country and in the world, actually, and they had, like, of course, Gordon Ramsay. Right. So was Gordon Ramsay even around or doing his thing? Did you know who he was back in the day?
I didn't. I know who he is now. I don't really watch those shows.
Yeah.
I have no desire to, really.
Would you ever, I know now your career has changed, but have you ever entertained being on one of those shows or any show at all?
No, I've had people ask me about that. Don't you want to be on Chopped? It's really the stress that I've lived through many times already.
Yeah.
I don't really want to do it purposefully. I did it because the situation kind of demanded it. I don't have any desire to fight that battle today.
Do you have any chefs that you look up to that you kind of shaped your career or kind of inspired you to be a chef or be a better chef or anything?
Well, oddly enough, I didn't ever want to be impressed with Julia Child, but secretly I really was, because I loved that she spent so much time in France and really brought true cuisine to America. I mean, she was very instrumental in that. I'm very in awe of what she did.
Yeah.
So I guess when I was in chef school, a lot of women didn't make it through. It was kind of a rough place to be. Commercial kitchen's kind of a rough place to be. So I didn't want to, I knew I had to make it on my own. I just kind of had this gutted out sort of mentality. I'm not sure I had to have that, but I thought I had to at that point. So I didn't want to look up to anybody or use anybody as a role model. But it's funny. I've watched that Julie and Julia movie and just cried through it. It's like, why are you crying? It's because I wanted to do that same thing and didn't get to. I did for a little while, but 5 weeks is not 5 years.
The Julie and it's a movie?
It's a movie. This woman wanted to cook through The Art of Mastering French Cooking, which was a Julia Child cookbook. I had thought of doing that myself, but I thought I can just do this at work. A lot of people do not really go for classical cuisine as such anymore. That landscape has changed as well. It's gotten very bizarre.
Bizarre. So what do you think about the landscape now? Because when you started, you had to go to school, and you had all that education and time. And we were talking, and you were mentioning that now you could just take a, I don't know, some sort of course, and then now you're a chef. Like, is it easier to be a chef in your mind nowadays?
I think a lot of people use private chefs to, for time management purposes, and they want to feed their kids in a healthy way, and not order out pizza every night, and that's a legitimate thing. And there are plenty of people who are private chefs that don't have any training at all.
Yeah.
Really. I see nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So, in answer to your question, I think there's all different levels now, and it's not really standardized unless you go through a governing body like American Chefs Association, Texas Chefs Association, which is who I did my apprenticeship under. But I never had a desire to do all those certifications. I do have one certification as a certified culinary professional. It's through International Association of Culinary Professionals, which oddly enough was something that was a little more important up north as far as just, being a respected thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Because when it comes to like the landscape of chefing and landscape of everything now has changed with the internet and promoting yourself and Instagram, and there's a lot more opportunity now, right, than there was before.
Opportunity, I think it's a more accepted thing because that visual of seeing chefs on the television day in, day out does change our culture in significant ways.
That's true.
And that wasn't the case when I started off. There were no celebrity chefs. I think Dean Fearing and Stephen Piles were just emerging as celebrity chefs at that point. They're both from Dallas. I know you're not from Dallas. But.
There was a question I was going to ask you is how can you tell? Okay, there's a couple of things. So to find out who's a good chef or who's not a good chef, like, for example, you've been an estate chef for a long time. So I guess word would get out if you weren't a good chef, right? Like, they say bad news travels fast. So if you're a good chef with your family and your estate, that when you go to another estate or another position, it's known like, oh, okay, you got Leslie Moore. Okay, she's good, and boom, boom, boom. But when you're a bad chef, like, that word goes quickly out there too, right? I
would think it would. The 1% wealthy group is kind of a small group.
Yeah.
And most of them have chefs. I guess when I was in business for myself, I didn't really have to advertise because people did know who I was. That was grateful for that because I didn't have the foggiest clue about how to advertise and market. That wasn't my strength. I just wanted to cook.
It's interesting. Like, you just wanted to cook. You didn't market or advertise. But then you got people that maybe that are not as good, but are very good at marketing and advertising.
And those people pass the word as well.
Yeah.
Or contacts that I made at Sur La Table, or contacts that I made in parties that I catered, and the wait staff, and that word travels through the wait staff.
And when you were cooking, did you you get better and better? You're always learning, right?
To a certain degree, you are. A lot of times, you are trying to satisfy a certain palate or a certain diet that someone wants to be on. That's just the brass tacks sometimes of cooking. That wouldn't be my favorite thing to do, but I have done a lot of that, and it is helpful to people, and they do appreciate it. So, is it wrong to do that? No.
No.
Not at all.
What is your Okay, first of all, if I was a chef, I'm just saying this, like, I think I'd be eating while I'd be preparing stuff. Is that like a no-no? When you're a chef, you're not supposed to eat while you're like, do you taste stuff, or how does that work?
You do taste stuff. If you are a pastry chef, you are going by recipes.
Okay.
Or you are going by ratios in your head.
Okay.
You don't have to taste to make sure the taste is just right.
Okay.
If you're making a sauce, I'll know general proportions of the alcohol I'm using, the veal stock I'm using, the flavoring agents I'm using, the butter I'm using to finish it. I kind of know proportions pretty well after doing it for so many years. Yeah. I still want to taste it at the end and want to make sure the salt is right, the fire is right, the level of butter, and all that stuff. You do need a little. You don't need a big, a cup of it. You need a taste of it. Yeah. So I did eat a lot while I chefed. I decided to not be just a pastry chef. I think I would have just eaten chocolate all day. I don't think I need to do that.
Right.
So, that's why I did both.
Okay.
Because I had an opportunity to go in that direction at one point with one of the up-and-coming restaurants. They needed a pastry chef to do all the baking, and it was a separate place where you went to do all the pastry and all the baking. And that sounded really great to me, and there would only be one other person in there with me. And I thought, I just don't think that'd be right for me. So I stuck with estate chef.
Okay, estate chef.
Yes.
Okay, so I have two questions. One is, have you ever worked like side by side with another chef?
Sure, plenty of times.
Plenty of times. So, out of all the times you've done it, what percentage did it work out and it was good, and what percentage wasn't good and it wasn't a good combination or team effort?
I worked with Michel, the French chef, many times at that same estate. I worked with him many times, and when we did parties, we would decide who was going to do the main part of the meal and who was going to do hors d'oeuvres, because hors d'oeuvres are very labor intensive, and if you're under a lot of stress, maybe you don't want to do all the little nitpicky details, which I liked. So he would do the heavy part of the meal. I would do all the hors d'oeuvres and the beginners, the starters.
Yeah.
And that worked really well together. I've done, when I worked at the Perot's with Susie, Susie was really the head, and I would do a lot of the pastries. She didn't do pastry. She wanted me to do pastries and baking. That was all of that was great. The only chef I think I didn't do well with is one that did not respect me as a fellow chef. Kind of wanted to make me the underling and was not really respectful of me. So if there's not mutual respect in the kitchen, then you're not going to do well. So I didn't buck it. I just helped him out as much as I could and just didn't work with him but that one time.
Gotcha.
Right.
It was a question I was going to ask you in the middle of when you were talking. I didn't want to ask. What was that question? Oh, what do you wear? Like, what is a chef? I mean, I see it, but like, you wear the hat and everything. You wear, is it pants? Is it a dress? Like, what is it?
I always wore black pants. When I was in a commercial kitchen in a hotel or, a restaurant, a country club, you wear black pants. They provide the chef coats. You will be wearing a hat.
Okay.
As an estate chef or in a private situation, I always kept my hair back. Yeah. I was a fanatic about cleanliness.
Yeah.
And not bleach. I don't want bleach in my food. I don't want chemicals on my space, my area. Yeah. I was a little over the top about that because people ate from my hands, literally. So I wanted to make sure I did all that I could do to make it as hygienic as possible.
Because you don't wear gloves, right?
Do not wear gloves, no. Okay. So a very clean kitchen is very important to me. So in answer to your question, as a private chef, when I first started out, there were no chef coats for women, styled for women. Okay. And I still see a lot of women chefs who don't look great in those chef coats that are made for men. Okay. So the few that I really liked, they don't make anymore. So I've seen it go from no chef coats for women, kind of crummy, cheap chef coats for women. Oh, some that fit, some that do well, back to just like kind of men's coats.
But why is that? It kind of adds to the culture of like the man is the head chef or something. Like, why through time there should be more women chef outfits, right?
I thought so too. So I don't have an answer for that. I really don't.
I don't like that.
I
don't like that. As time goes on, we gotta recognize something here that is unfair or unjust, right?
Well, for somebody out there who wants to make money, get a fabulous chef coat for a woman, and I can call me. I'll give you details of what you need. You need vents under the arms. You need a high quality fabric. You need, anyway, I could go on and on.
No, that's good. That's good. Don't give it away, man. That might be
that might be our next marketing.
Right. We might be starting something new.
Right.
So have you ever been intimidated by another, like, I'm working with this person, or you know, like, have you ever been intimidated, like, working with somebody or being around another chef?
I was around a chef who was a major celebrity chef, and they just brought him in for a special dinner because I had so much work, and they said, well, can't we just get this? Because, you know, they have big name people showing up, so they want a big name chef. So, you know, they hired somebody that had supposedly worked for royalty, and you know, that's fine. I didn't really click with that person. It kind of
was that one guy you were talking about earlier?
No, this is the first time I had only seen him twice. So, I think if I went back to cooking at this point, that wouldn't be the case. I'm much older and wiser now. But
okay, that was early in your career.
Yeah, I was kind of young, so or didn't quite have some things matured yet on that level, and it did kind of freak me out a little bit. So when I was really young, I was very cocky. Oh my! But
you were cocky.
Well, it was a cover because I had to kind of gut it out and protect myself. So it was kind of a protective coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And hopefully I've dropped all that now because I don't think that's a good thing at all.
Yeah.
Don't want to be in that.
But maybe that's why you might have not got along with him, maybe because at that time you were, I don't know, we'll use cocky for now, but maybe, you know, that this person now is not maybe not the same person back then.
Right. And then maybe that protected me from some of the guys that I worked with in the commercial setting. So
now that I'm talking to you and I'm learning this, is that being a woman as a chef is harder than being a chef as a man?
I think it's a whole different world today than when I started out. There were very few women who made it through. There were a lot of people that do, you know, prep work, men and women. But on the higher levels, there are plenty of women now. There weren't back in the day. But it's like I said, it's a whole different world now. You got to understand that was the mid-'80s. That dates me, but you know that's when I started doing this.
Yes.
So it's a different world now. There were, like I said, there were only a couple of public television chefs, and now there are celebrity chefs on every corner.
Did they ever anyone try to discourage you, like in your beginning of your career, saying, you know, it's a man's, you know, industry, it's going to be tough for you? I don't know if you really want to do that. Did anyone ever talk to you like that?
If they did, I don't recall, and I wouldn't have listened. That smart aleck kid would not have listened. What I found in my recent years is that people have discouraged me from being a kitchen designer, and I didn't listen to that either because I felt like that's what I was supposed to do.
Kudos to you. Don't listen to anybody. Listen to your heart. Listen to your drive and prove all these people wrong and be the example.
Thank you. Well, working on that.
You just reminded me that I have another friend. Her name is Kenny, and she was an airline pilot back in the 70s. Ooh, she told me some tough stories of how it was, and she didn't get no respect. Pilots just getting up and not even want. I'm not flying with her.
Oh,
you know, like just not even. No, I'm not working with her.
Whoa.
She did a lot, man, but she's definitely gonna be. You just reminded me. I'm gonna do one with her, and we're gonna talk about these male chauvinists out there. We're here to change the world. We're tired of this.
Well, Julia Child, you know, she was a chef, and our own Paula Lambert here in Dallas. There are plenty of women chefs from back in the day, and now not as many as there are men, of course.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
The question is, I want you to share a story, any memorable story that you remember in your 30-year career. It could be good, could be bad, it could be funny. Anything, that would be interesting to people that don't know anything about that world.
Well, I have a few things pop into my mind. It's
Ooh, few.
A few things. I got to do a dinner for Ted Cruz, which was great fun, and it brought him and his wife back to the kitchen to meet me, which doesn't always happen.
Whoa. How'd you feel when that happened? Felt like...
Well, a little intimidated. I wasn't sure what to say. It's like, Mr., anyway,
yeah.
I got through it and it was fine. But I was glad to have that opportunity. When I worked part-time for the Perots, there was a dinner they did for a couple that they were royalty. Yeah. But what was so great about that dinner is that it went off exactly as I wanted it to, which, you kind of roll with the punches a lot of times. Things don't always come out exactly as you want, but everything came out exactly as I wanted.
Yes.
And Mr. Perot said, I'm really impressed. So I will remember always. I was really grateful for that.
Did you cry?
I didn't. I feel like I'm going to now, but I didn't.
Here's the place to cry if you want to cry.
I did a reception for Barbara Bush when I worked for the Lady on the Lake. So I've got to have some really, some highlights.
No, that's definitely highlights. I mean, when they come to the kitchen or they tell you, well, first of all, when they came to the kitchen, did you know if it was good or bad? Because that could have went either way, right? Or no?
It was before the dinner ever started, but they were very happy with everything. I mean, I have pictures. My employer wanted to do a special letter of commendation for that dinner because it went really well, and we never actually followed through and did it. But, they were just highlights. Like, I worked really hard on this. I wanted to do a really good job, and, hey, it happened. Thank you. By the grace of God, everything went off really well, and, it was a real positive experience.
Well, I must say that I'm so glad we had this conversation, this interview. I know we talk at Home Depot, and I think you're very special, and I'm glad that you're sharing your life because I'm very interested in what you've done and hearing everything you've done as far as like getting those accolades and dealing with the people that you've dealt with, that 1% that I've never met in my life.
Right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a great honor. I'm floored that you're really that interested in it. It's really, an honor. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming in today. I'll see you because we still have our kitchen stuff to finish.
Right.
But I appreciate you sharing with my podcast fans that are going to be listening to this episode 2. Mm-hmm. It's going to be many episodes. This is episode 2. This is early in my career. Kind of like when you first were being cocky back in the day.
Go, Roderick. Wow.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Rodism podcast, and stay tuned for episode 3. All right, signing out. Bye.